Hey guys, it's Padami and I have a video clip of a ranked game that I did in patch 4.12. So it was about a month ago and it was just at the tier end of my Platinum 1 games before I got to Diamond, so I just want to show you this as it kind of proves my point when people say, oh, higher elo you don't get like Ragers and Flamers and people AFK when it doesn't really matter what elo you are, you're gonna get them all. Like, no matter what elo you are, it's just people in these games, I'm afraid. So this game I'm gonna take Ancient Coin, 2 mana pots, and 2 health pots. A lot of people are still unsure about what to pick over either Spell Thief's Edge or Ancient Coin, so my thought process was that they have some high, pretty mobile champs like Lulu, Zed, and Quirky. So we want to be able to catch them if they use their escapes, and we also have Elise, Syndra for CC, which is pretty good, so we can catch someone, and the coin is really good with Karma Shields as well, because she also gives you a speed buff, so it's pretty good. So right now we're just doing the normal covering our jungle areas to make sure that nobody's going to try and invade. As you can see that Corky and Thrasher making their way down the bot lane. It's kind of silly when you get a lot of people that say, ah, Janna, she's totally useless as a sport these days, blah 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 blah. But pick a champion that you are capable of playing and that you're reasonably good at, because there's absolutely no point and going for a champion that you have no idea about and you never play, but somebody says, oh, they're so strong, they're OP, you can do it, you can pick them. No, it's just silly. At this point, my jungler says to me, oh, I think Lee Sin might start red instead of blue, can you check? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Thinking that that wouldn't be the case, and I would see Thresh and Corky coming down. But instead of that, Corky and Thresh decided to hide in the first brush, which is quite an old decent tactic, I guess, that a lot of people tend to fall for. So Lucian obviously gets really low and has to be at this point. I have to play relatively safe now, as Lucian obviously is waiting to come back. I get caught by Thresh Hook, and at this point, because of the burst of the Corki, I have to flash out, otherwise I would have died from the ignite and the damage. So I take a health pot, just so I can regen some health back from all that fighting, and Lucian comes back to lane. Elise decides to come for a gank that both me and Lucian didn't quite expect, so it gets a bit messy. Elise ends up having to burn her flash due to not being there on time to give her sort of any backup. So by the end of this, my exhaust and Lucian's heal is down, as well as Elise's flash, so it was a pretty unsuccessful gank. Right now I'm kind of pissed off at myself because I knew I should have played safer against Thresh instead of burning my flash and maybe being a little bit cocky in lane and trying to zone them by myself when Lucian wasn't there yet. Here, Lucian gets caught by Thresh Hook and takes quite a bit of damage. I use my tornado to push them back. Lucian continues to play aggressive, thinking he's safe as he's under the turret, but the fresh flame, which was empowered, lets him take first blood. So at this point, bot lane's going absolutely fantastic. No, it's going pretty bad. And yeah, well, I guess the only thing you can do right now is play pretty safe and farm. At this point, the Lucian starts to say things in a not so polite manner, which overall, I started thinking to myself that, oh, it's going to be one of those players that's going to blame everyone but himself. I'm not going to go too much into the big rant about the mentality of solo queue, but you know, if you have someone like that, you can just instantly mute them, and that's it, and just play the game. It's the only thing you really can do against players who are like that, because if you just keep listening to what they're going to say, it's just going to bring you down and it affects your gameplay. I don't usually like playing this passive on Janna. Usually I'd be kind of more up front to zone the Thresh away from the Lucian, but we don't have any vision right now, and I've got the tools to help Lucian escape. So it's better that I'm kind of just behind him at this point, just in case the jungler does end up coming towards us. The CS difference at the moment between Lucian and Corki isn't too bad, so... So there's a trade going off here. I try and slow Thresh so he can't initiate anymore on Lucian. So that was kind of even. Slightly more in our favour, that trade. Corki takes a few health pots, so does Lucian. I think Corki also takes a mana pot. So, trade starts again. So we're fighting. Lucian gets caught by Thresh. Ignite goes off. Corki loses a lot of damage and steps away. Thresh keeps trying to initiate on me. And they back off slightly. Thresh wants to go in for more, thinks he's stronger. Thresh is playing really aggressive right now, but it works out more in our favour. We take advantage of it and Lucian ends up getting a kill, which is pretty good for them being so dominant in the lane. So they're forced to go back and we start pushing the lane toward the side of the river in case Lee Sin comes, because we're kind of low and I don't want to give him any free kills. So Corki's forced to go back. Lucian gives him a couple of smacks. And we push the lane, because that's what you want to do. You want to push the lane. Take those minions right up to the turret so that you're denying the minions. And then we're going to recall our force back. On my first back, I upgrade my coin to Nomad's Medallion. I buy a ruby crystal with 1 green and a pink ward, as I can't afford the full size stone yet, and I buy a couple of pots. Right now, Elise is ganking mid to help Syndra from Zed, and Lee is also in the mid lane, as well as Thresh, who's attempting to try and kill Elise. I don't realise until really late that Syndra needs help from Lee, so I kind of go, and then she dies, so I go back to my lane. I ward the brush with a pink, because I want to make sure that Lee's not going to jump into that brush. It's quite a sneaky tactic to use. So there's 2 things I'm thinking about here. I know that Lee is at blue side, which means there's a higher risk of being ganked, and that Corki is on his own, which means that we have the upper hand, as it's 2v1 right now. So we can see Lee coming into lane. I make sure that I'm kind of in front of Lucian, taking the brunt of the damage. I miss my tornado as he actually lands on me before I release the tornado, as you have to do it before he actually hits you in order for that to work. So an unsuccessful gank for them, and we start trading 2 again. Again, I get caught by a Thresh Hook. I have to flash it because Corki's damage is pretty high right now. I shield Lucian, he gets caught, I have to use my ult, but it's still just enough to make Lucian live. I stand to take the brunt of the damage because I don't want them to focus on Lucian anymore, I want them to focus me. So I'm staying in this brush because I want to see Thresh. I get hook landed, I tornado it away. If Lucian E'd himself and queued into Corki, he would have died, but instead Lucian played a bit more careful, and due to the Ignite and the Corki flash damage, he ended up dying. So it was kind of a bad trade for us. Again, at this point, the chat starts to become quite toxic with things being said that are just really unnecessary to be said. At this point, I'm able to form my Sightstone, which is going to increase the vision around our bot lane, which is really good for us. When you've got your Sightstone, you don't need to have the Trinket Ward anymore. You should replace it with a Sweeper. It's just so much better. If you notice on the minimap, the first pink ward that I put down is still there, which is a decent amount of vision time that we've gained from that. At this point, I'm not really sure why the Lucian decides to back at this point. If he could afford his blade or a better upgrade, then yeah, it would be an alright time. But he only goes back to buy boots with full HP and half mana, so I don't think it was really worth it going back at that specific time. Thresh spots my pink ward and decides to take it out, so I quickly put a ward on Drake as it's a bit too dangerous for me to go outside that area with Corki and Thresh there without Lucian. But I still want to be able to see the Drake because at this point this is where it would probably be contested. So we're trading in lane, I get caught by Thresh, which is really bad at this point. I ult to try and separate the two to push Thresh into the turret, but the damage from Corki at the moment, because of the Sheen in his rage, is way too much, and it ends up giving him a double kill. So it was pretty bad. Again, this double kill is just infuriating the Lucian and causing more toxicity within the game, and also Syndra at this point starts to cause a bit of toxic behavior in the chat. People have to remember that, you know, you have bad days, you play bad, you're not in the best of moods, everything seems to be going wrong for you that day. It's just no excuse to bring your whole team down. I know full well that I have a bit of a temper, especially when it comes to League, but I think if I can control it, I think many other people can as well. At this point, Lucian wants to go back from the lane again with full HP and mana. Elise and Syndra are pinging like crazy at this point because they want a gank, they want to come bot to gank, and Lucian decides to stay. they put a ward in the brush, so I try and bait it out to try and take the ward, and Corky falls for it. So we initiate a fight, and my exhaust goes down, but the lantern stops anything from happening further.
Blue team's turret has been destroyed.
At this point, the opposing team decides to do Drake, but there's nothing we can do to contest it at the moment. Here there is some really bad communication between Karma and Elise. Karma pings like crazy to go in, and Elise goes in and ends up killing herself solo 4v1. At this point I can see Lucian getting initiated on, and at this point Lucian gives up and decides to troll and flash into the opposing direction of me. As you can see, it's kind of a bit silly. I stand still here to type, "Why didn't you come to me?" And the answer that I get is, "I don't really care about this game anymore," which puts a downer on everybody. The turret's gonna go down at this point with the two of them, so there's not really much I can do. So I just step away, trying to avoid the thrash hook from being caught. But I end up taking the thrash hook, so I have to use my ult and flash to get away, which is kind of wasteful. What I should have done there was just back off when I knew the turret was low, instead of shielding it, and I would have saved my flash. It's hard when you have a lot of negativity in a game to stay focused. I know that I really suffer from that myself, and I know that right now in this game my gameplay is becoming pretty subpar instead of me trying 100%, just because I feel like somebody else is purposely feeding in the game. So yeah, it's hard. It is really hard to try and stay 100% positive about the whole thing. So at this point I know Lucian is kind of given up on this game, and I'm kind of stumbling as in ideas of what to do, as it can be really demoralizing to have especially an AD carry, or anyone for that fact, to have such a bad opinion about players in the game and everything in general when you're trying to win, especially in ranked. Since I know the minions or bot tower, Lucian's relatively safe to farm, so I'm just trying to go about the map to try and gain some vision as much as I can without it being too dangerous for myself. If every lane is falling behind, the best thing you can do is gain vision of your own jungle, just so you don't get picked off in it and it becomes worse and worse and worse, and even more harder to bring the game back into your favor. At this point, if you see in the minimap, they're all over a jungle, so it's really important to try and gain some vision. And Corky's just become so strong with Thresh that they're diving the Lucian again under the turret, causing him to die again. At this point, we're just really trying to protect our turret from Corky and Thresh. We see that Zed is initiating on Elise in the middle, so me and Cinder try to go help. Meanwhile, Corky and Thresh really push the bot lane into the turret. I see that Thresh and Corky are continuing to push, so we join Lucian in the bot lane to try and protect the rest of it. At this point, Thresh and Corky do a lot of damage. Corky's 6-0 and Lucian's 1-5. Again, I have to use my ult from getting caught. I think at this point, as I'm duo queuing with the jungler, I'm kind of moaning and having a bit of a sob story and mumble about how rubbish I'm being and how rubbish my playing is. At this point, we're too low to stay to protect the turret, and the turret's health is really low as well, so that's another turret down on the bot lane. And if I never tornadoed that Thresh right there, he would have used his play to stop Lucian from recalling. So at this point here, if you notice on the minimap, Karma and Syndra go back from top, and Karma uses her TP to go to the top lane turret, and then it reaches 20 minutes, so Karma says /surrender, people say no, and then she goes, okay, I'm AFK. And Syndra then and me say, you know, there's no need to go AFK, etc, etc. And she says, well, if the Lucian and the Syndra both have that attitude and just give up, then what's the point? I might as well just go AFK. Which, you know, is kind of understandable. You're at that stage in a game where you're not really sure that the Lucian is even on your side at all to play. So it's like a 4v5 game, and the Syndra's being pretty toxic as well. I never like to surrender games for the following reason, that about 90% of the time when the opposing group seems to get ahead is when they make the most mistakes or become really greedy, and that's when you can bring back the game. So me and Elise are trying to protect the middle turret at the moment from Zed and Lulu, and at this point Lucian is about to get caught by Thresh and Quirky again, and it's pretty clear that both Lucian doesn't really care about this game. Yeah.
Godlike.
At this point in the game, the main thing in my head is vision control. If the opposing team are pushing this hard and are frankly winning this hard, then the only way to gain it back is to get picks off people, to have good team fights with your team, and to have enough vision that you're not going to get caught out yourself. So Karma decides to stop being AFK and initiates a fight with all of us, and it ends up a pretty decent team fight. So we get into quite a close range fight here, and I want to use my ult to stop Lee from going into anybody, but he ends up kicking Elise out through the red buff. They go back, but Lee decides to come back in, thinking he can get a couple of kills. He has to flash back out, and this is when Zed decides to ult and ignite me to try and pick me off, but it's unsuccessful. We still continue to try and poke them down, and we end up killing 4 members of their team.
Purple team's turret has been destroyed.
If we had surrendered at 20, we wouldn't have gotten 4 kills there, and we wouldn't have gotten a bottom turret. So things are looking better in our favour for this game at the moment. So a sight stone is there. I have my coin upgraded so we can get the speed buff, and I'm going to buy Moby Boots because at this point vision is a key thing to try and take picks off, to try and give us that more bit of an edge in the game. My thought process is gaining vision, so I put a pink ward at the Baron area to make sure they're not hovering around it, as they could because Corky's pretty fed at this point. And I noticed that Corky and Thresh are continuing to push bot, so I'm heading down there to try and stop them. I clear a ward on my way down. I can see Lucian has red. I see that Thresh is coming towards us, so I ping for them to stay so we can bait into the fight and kill Thresh. Which works, and Lucian decides to join in on the team fights now, which is really good, which kind of, you know, yay, all's good. We decide to cheers the Quirky, and we get another kill. At this point we back because there's nothing else to gain from bot, and we see that Lee and Lulu are pushing top. I buy home guards as the constant pressure for taking down their turrets. It's kind of needed at this point. I try and stop them. I can see that Elise and Lucian are there, so Elise goes in to initiate more of a fight. Lulu ults Lee a little bit too late. I'm kind of staying near Lucian at this point because I know that Lee's still hovering around and I don't want him to jump on him at this point. Use her coin so we can catch up to Lulu. And I think she kind of gives in and takes the kill to save the Zed at this point. So we've got Lee really low. He's going back to base, so it's Zed, and we've killed Lulu, so I'm pinging like crazy to Baron while Lucian and me and Elisa are top. Karma and Syndra continue to push up mid lane while we try and 3-man Baron. Karma and Syndra don't realise that Thresh and Corki in the bot lane are kind of behind them to flank at the moment, and as a result they both die, but we get Baron. So it's kind of a half and half trade. It would have been a lot better trade if they survived and we got Baron as well, but it wasn't too bad. Obviously at this point we're not aware that Lulu has disconnected while we're playing the actual game. At this point we have Baron, but we have to defend our base because Karma and Syndra is obviously still dead at this point, and there's only 3 of us, so we're trying to prevent them pushing as much as we can. Lucian goes a little bit crazy at this point and scares me and Elise. So Elise can't really go back when she wants to. Karma and Syndra are back up, which means it gives me and Elise some time to go back and buy because we know that they'll be able to hold the tower for a little bit while we buy some items. I buy Ether Wisp, which I will later turn into Twin Shadows, as the ghosts are really good for being able to use, so you can gain more vision in their jungle and you feel that little bit safer going in by yourself. And also it's really great for slowing the enemy so you can get nice picks. Since we have the advantage, we're able to gain the mid turret, which is really good for us.
Purple team's turret has been destroyed.
At this point, Karma starts to initiate a fight from Lee Sin, and I have to kind of go the long way to get back into the fight, but it goes in our favour, so it's not too bad. And we're trying to just poke down the turret as much as we can, so we can try and get it down. A lot of people are getting low. Lucian goes in. He dies, but we end up getting a couple of kills as well, so it's not too bad. And now that everyone's dead except Lulu, we can push the turret.
Purple team's turret has been destroyed.
After we take the turret down, usually you would try and go for the inhib, and at the time Lulu and Thresh were up at this point, and there was still a bit of time for Lee, Zed and Corki to get up, but I think it was better to be safe than sorry as our lanes were both being pushed really hard by the minions as well. You also have to take into account when you're taking that chance of people respawning and taking the inhib is that the 3 of them just burst their flashes, so if they get caught they're gonna die. It's kind of as simple as that. I've warded up some general areas. I can see that they're doing dragon. The only thing I can hope for is a really lucky steal, which doesn't happen sadly.
Purple team has slain the dragon.
At this point I'm just warding and dewarding our jungle to give us a bit of an advantage, and Lee decides to do the same with our jungle, and we have a bit of a ward fight. still mid at this point, and Syndra gets a really good stun on Quirky, leading to his death, which makes this team fight really favourable to us as they're missing their AD carry. Lulu teleports in bot, but they realise that they have to kind of scramble out of there. With Elise and her movement speed increases, we're able to catch out the Lulu. Because this team fight went so well for us, we were able to get the inhib in the mid lane.
Purple team's inhibitor has been destroyed.
At this point, we don't have anything else to gain from mid, so we decide to do our epic Monte Cristo rotations to the top lane and get that tower down. Although I'm pretty sure Monte Cristo would have a few things to say about his rank game so far. Me, Karma and Elise push the top lane while Syndra and Lucian are hiding in a brush to see if anyone will take the bait, which they end up doing, which leads to a fight. Lucian and Syndra take quite a bit of damage, and we arrive to the fight a little bit late, but they're pretty much scared of Lucian damage. As soon as Zed ults Lucian, I ult him away, because the whole point of his ult is the extra damage that he does with it. So if I push him away, he can't do anything. It means his ult is just pretty much wasted. As you can see, we're trying to kite as much as we can using our shields. And the fight ends up turning in our favour. At this point, we know we've aced them, so we have quite a bit of time to push some turrets. I see some people tend to go back at this point, but there's really no need to. You know the death timers, and you know that people are dead. There's no harm that's going to come to you, so you have all this free time to push as much as you can.
Been destroyed.
We take the top inhibitor and we go back. Lucian decides to stay and Elise tries to help him, resulting in her death.
Purple team's turret has been destroyed.
And pretty much at this point we just want to try and escape with nobody
Purple
dying.
team's turret has been destroyed.
At this point we have some decent map control and they have 2 inhibitors down. So we have a bit of choice of where we can go next and what we want to do. We can either go bot as a team and push out and take the turret, or we can go into Baron, which is pretty free for us at the moment. My team is pinging to go for Baron, so I use my ghost because I can't see anything in front of me and I don't want to get caught because at this stage in the game would be pretty bad. And get ready just to take Baron. Because of the wards that I put down, you can see that Quirky's on his way to Baron. So I go towards to do a tornado to see if I can try and catch him, which it does. And Syndra decides to go and attack him, which pushes him away from Baron, so we're able to get it quite easily. I use my coin so me and Elise can get into the fight. We know that Quirky's low. I pop Lee Sin's Banshees in case he decides to go in, and we catch him below. And as of now, we have won the game. At this point, because so many people are dead, we can push into their base pretty easily and finish the game. If anything I want you to take from this video is that no matter what elo you are, you will always have AFKs, flamers and rageers. You will have bad games where you don't play so well, but you can still win because overall League is a team game. Thanks for watching guys. Toodles!